Cameron Knowles went from Auckland junior football to leading the Akron Zips in the USA, playing in the MLS, and becoming an MLS Cup winning coach. In this episode, we talk through his journey through the US college system, the challenges of professional soccer, and the transition into coaching with the Portland Timbers and Minnesota United. Okay, let's go. Cameron Knowles, welcome along to Strive 365. Fantastic to see you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me, mate.
Mate, it's been probably over 30 years since you were chasing me around Glenfield Rovers. I'm trying to score goals and avoid getting crunched by you, and then you just booting the ball up to Joey. We had some good times back then, and we ended up playing rep cricket together as well. So, yeah, we go a long way back. Followed similar journeys where we both spent some time in the US collegiate system. You were obviously a little bit more talented than me and went on and made a bit of a living as an athlete in the US. And then we both sort of found the coaching bug. So, like to draw those parallels. But maybe let's start us in the US. So explain a little bit about how you got yourself to Akron, a big football school or soccer school as it was. I'm not sure if it still is, but yeah, let's start there in your journey. And we can map a few things out if you can.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about like the level of the program. When I went there, no one really knew where it was or what it was doing. And then once I left was when they had their success, won a national championship. And now when I say Akron, especially here in the US, everyone's got a really good idea of what that is and how big that program is. So where they've got to now is incredible. But my pathway there came through Lee Jones, who was playing at North Shore United at the time, and playing with him. And he said, listen, they're looking for a player in your position. They're looking for a center back. Would you consider going to the US? And this was, on the back of U17 World Cup where I didn't play. I was looking to figure out what the next step was. Education was important to me. And then I went down that road of trying to find, is Akron the place? I had an opportunity to maybe go to UC Santa Barbara as well. Their assistant coach flew over, Tony Lockhead, Neil Jones, those guys ended up going to Santa Barbara, and I ended up going to Akron. And it's just one of those things. I left New Zealand at 18 thinking I would, try out the college thing. Maybe it lasts 4 years. And here we are, 20 odd years later, and I'm still here in the States.
Man, Tony Lockheed and Neil Jones, that's a throwback. Good people, good names, and yeah, good times. It was the same time I was over there. So you always keep an eye out for other Kiwis doing good things in the US. Like there's been a lot of past episodes around the US college system. We'll put some links in the show notes to those guests as well as Platform Sports. So if the US path is something of interest to you listening, please click that and those guys can explore your journey. So I don't want to spend too long there because there's so much more for us to think about. But kind of the end of that 4-year career, you played NCAA tournament. You're the captain. You're obviously thinking now about how to go pro. So something we haven't spoken about is the summer league. So the USL development league at the time. You were able to get an opportunity with Chicago Fire, which is an MLS club, but it was more their feeder team. Maybe just pull back the curtain on what the summer league is a little bit, maybe what it is now, if it's changed over those years, and how can athletes listening that might be in college right now, how can they leverage something like this through the off season before the MLS?
Yeah, I mean, it came about really as a conversation with my college coach, and he was like, "Listen, if you want a chance, then you need to be in an environment where you're going to be seen by more people." And this was an opportunity to play games over the summer rather than take, a 3-month, 4-month break. The college season is 24 games crammed into August to November, and then you really don't play much in the rest of the year, a little bit in the spring. And so that summer leading into my senior year, he made a call. The coach was interested. We went up, started off with, there's probably like 40 guys out there, and then they whittled it down, and the team had some incredible talent on it. I don't know if it's the same now because of how we have homegrown players. The academy system is more robust. There's a lot more talent that's staying within a club. But at that time, those PDL teams, there's probably 3 or 4 in the country that everyone was trying to get to because A, you knew you'd be playing with the best players in college, and B, you'd get, another chance to be seen and stay sharp over the summer. And so that was, fantastic for me. We had a great season, great team. a little bit of a run in the Open Cup as well. I ended up playing against a professional team, Rochester Rhinos in the Open Cup, who was one of the best at the time USL teams in the country. And then that led into, having a good senior year, which ultimately at the end of that then got me invited to the MLS Combine at the end of the season.
Let's talk about the combine. It's something that a lot of Kiwis will know through, especially if you follow American sports. You got the gridiron combine where you get a 40-yard dash and trying to hit moving targets with a gridiron. What does the soccer combine look like? And I guess in your current role, I'm assuming you're there looking at that every year, right, for the next college athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's still a big scouting pathway for us bringing college players in to Major League Soccer, and for me then. Ours got abbreviated because we were in California, and at the time there was just horrific rain. Fields were closed. So the cadence, and it's changed a lot over the years, but the cadence back then was you had a couple days training, you play a game, rest day, you end up playing, there was 4 teams, and you would play everyone. You play 3 games over the course of 8, 10 days. Ours got really condensed. It was like game, one rest day, game again. But largely that's what it is. You've got squads of 20 players. You're taking the best 80, 85 players in the country. That sort of come down. When we look at it now, there's less players involved. Again, I think it's a product of homegrown players coming through the academy system that have sort of bypassed college. So the talent that's in college is a little bit different. There's a lot more international athletes that are getting opportunities that weren't in the past because a lot of the domestic players are coming out and signing homegrown deals. But it's still a really viable pathway. And for me in that time, it was just trying to figure out a way to stand out and to show that, you have some qualities that might be valuable to a team.
So if you're a Kiwi or an Aussie in the US system, how do you get yourself at the combine? Is it you have to be selected by whoever selects? You have to be ranked in the top 88 or whatever? Who does that? Can you declare yourself eligible for that? Like, how does one get about themselves getting to the combine?
Yeah, the answer is yes. I mean, it's a lot of those things. It's one, it's really hard. So what you've got over 200 Division One programs. You've got, say, 50 kids going to the combine, and so being on a good team obviously helps. Being a very good player, a very successful player on any team helps. And then the more people that are aware of you, there'll be coaches that we call around, and we'll do our own scouting and submit a list to Major League Soccer if we would like these guys to be draft eligible. We think these players should be at the combine. And then Major League Soccer has their own scouting and recruitment department for the combine, where they go around and they look and they say, right, okay, who are these guys? And then there's you can sort of fall because of the timing of it. And some additions, it's fallen right when the College Cup is. So if you're one of the last 4 teams in, NCAA tournament standing, then you're going to be ineligible for the combine. Now, might think that's a bad thing, but obviously you've still got a lot of eyes on those games. And I think now, with scouting departments being more robust, with the college players still showing that they're a really critical part of Major League Soccer. I mean, we just had a club record transfer from Minnesota United to Villarreal that just 4 years ago was a college draft pick, and so there's still a lot of weight put into it. My advice would be you've got to make yourself known, and that's being a really good player. But 2, play more in the summer, get around, see if you can train. Every MLS team has an MLS Next Pro team. Can you go and spend 2 weeks training with that team? NCAA rules, you'll have to cover your own costs, but it's a worthy investment in, getting another set of eyes on you. And so we've had that as well over the summer, where guys have just come and trained with us for a couple of weeks, and then you get to see them in your environment, you test them against your own players, and you have a better idea of whether they'll should be invited to the combine or should be considered for the draft.
How does one get about that opportunity? Is it a cold email to the GM of football? Is it through an agent? Is it through the college coach reaching out through a connection that he or she may have formed over the years?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is through college coaches. We'll have a college coach that knows someone directly at the club or knows someone that knows someone, and football's a small world. There's Once you start asking the questions, there's probably a lot more yeses than you realize. You know, there's a lot of no's along the way, but there's certainly a lot more yeses. And the amount of times that, you know, someone's reached out and said, "Hey, I was put in front of you by so and so," and yeah, okay, send us some tape. You know, it's not as easy as just come in. Then we do a little bit of homework and we look at players. But I think where teams don't want to miss, and you know, then you know that there's players falling through the cracks all the time in the US. The country's just too big. You'd be surprised at how those opportunities come about. But I think the first port of call is talk to your college coach. You know, who do they know? Talk to your teammates. What are they doing over the summer? You know, maybe it's one of those things where they've got something lined up and you can go with them. That you know that works out in your favor.
Yeah, the message is a very similar one to past guests, where if you don't ask, you don't get, or you don't find out. That's the first one, and then you need to do more sometimes, or do something different than your peers to not only stand out, but to close the gap. To yeah, just be working on your craft, whatever code it is, when everybody else is taking a rest. Right, that's how you can accelerate. What about things such as NIL, so name, image, likeness, which is now a thing in the US college system? You talk about standing out. You know, is the personal brand, like we're starting to see athletes have a bigger focus around social media of themselves, and the NCAA is now starting to reward athletes for that. Is that sort of stuff also helpful, in your opinion, to be known, or is it more around their athletic qualities?
I think at the end of the day, it's the substance. You know, it's what they do on the pitch that's going to do the talking. There's, certainly an opportunity to build a personal brand, and I think what you've got to accept is with that comes risk. You know, when you're doing that and things are going well and it's all positive feedback, that's great. When you become, somewhat of a brand or a public figure and things don't go well, then that can turn on you really quickly too. And I think that's a real double-edged sword with a lot of the social media stuff. And I think it's difficult for young athletes to navigate, but I would just focus on the product on the field. I would focus on being the best athlete you can be, being the best, learner that you can be, looking to grow, develop, because that's ultimately what's going to do the talking. Something else might get you noticed, but it's not necessarily going to be the thing that is the game changer. I think what you say and doing something a little bit different or doing more is more important. But it's interesting how things have changed too. Like you look at even the transfer portal now. When I was in college, guys, you didn't transfer. You stayed at your school. You know, if you didn't play your first 2 years, you were building into a junior year or senior year where you thought, right now I'm going to get a chance to play. Now what happens is, you don't like where you're at. You enter the transfer portal and you move. You have 2 good years at a sort of mid-major school. You go to a top ACC school in the transfer portal and you see out your senior year. There's a lot more movement of players and there's a lot more, I would say, power that's sort of shifted to the player in that sense, that they have a lot more freedom of movement than they ever did before.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. So I'm just trying to draw a parallel. So for you as an MLS coach, me as a college athlete, for me to get on your radar, I need to be excelling, right? So is it better, in your opinion, to be at let's say, a power school, whatever that is, in various conferences, and being part of a squad, training every day, not seeing the field a lot, certainly my first couple of years, freshman and sophomore years, and then maybe starting to become a leader by my senior year at that big program? Or do you think going a different road and going maybe a middle school or a D2, kicking ass for the first couple of years and then looking to get a transfer to one of these bigger schools? Two-part question. From a development perspective, what do you think is better? The better program, being in there daily, or they may not be playing as much. And the second part, from a identification to the next stage, being the professional game, what do you think is a better? I know everybody will have a different road, but in general, what do you think is a better play?
Yeah, I don't know if there is a better. I think it depends on the individual. You can see that there's guys where academically college really isn't their thing. They may not have the grades to get into a school that they want to get to that's got the athletic program that they want to get to. But if they go to a community college for 2 years, all of a sudden they get their grades up, they transfer after 2 years to a Division I school, and they get themselves a professional opportunity that might not have been there. On the other hand, you get someone that automatically gets into a school, grinds it out for a couple years. They get to show that they've had a bit of adversity. They get, you look at that from a coaching perspective and you say, right, they've got some real character about them. They stuck with the program. They trusted the environment that they were in. They worked really hard. They overcame a lot of obstacles, and, they ended up playing. And so I think there's benefits to both pathways. I mean, development just isn't one size fits all. This. It's just like the college system here is huge. 200 Division I schools. Then you've got Division II, NAIA. There's just so much. Junior colleges, community colleges. Ultimately, being in a good environment to develop is different for each athlete, but playing games is huge too. Like I really think playing and being able to test yourself and figuring out what's comfortable for you and what's uncomfortable for you is really important.
And that's where the I guess the negative piece for the US system is the off season is so long, or the game schedule is so compact. So finding ways to add more games, so the summer league, or trialing out or training with a different program in the off season is really important. So again, regardless of the code, it's thinking about how can I best utilize my calendar year in order to balance competition spread across a number of months. As well as training, as well as all the other auxiliary pieces. If you're liking the episode so far, it would mean the world to me if you could hit the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, 5 stars on Spotify, or follow on Apple Podcasts. Or if you'd like to, you can buy me a coffee using the link in the show notes below. Right, let's keep moving forward. So Combine goes well, obviously, because you get an offer to join an MLS club and Real Salt Lake. You're there for a couple of years. So you're now in the professional world. Let's talk about that transition now. You land, you're a rookie, you've had a good senior college career. Now you kind of go back to the bottom of the totem pole. This could be a space now where a lot of our athletes listening are about to experience or make this sort of transition. And to make it stick, this is kind of my real focus for this podcast, is to help athletes make it stick, stay in the professional game longer, convert to a senior national team, and stay in the national team squad for a number of years. As opposed to you get in, you get an experience because you've got some talent, you're showing some ability, but then, it's just not quite going to play out in the long term for you. So just take us back to this really pivotal time in your career, some of the things that you look back on with some real fondness, maybe some things that if you had your time again, you'd do a bit different in order to help that career stick.
Well, I think the first thing that it sort of made me realize is I went to the Combine, and probably like every kid that goes to the Combine, you think, hey, I've done all right here, like, man, I've got a chance. And then as you're sitting there and you're watching the draft, and the first round goes by and the second round goes by and the third round goes by, and you're starting to see these guys get picked and you don't get picked, then you're like, oh man, it really humbles you in a way that, man, it's not what I thought it was, and I got lucky because the team that picked me, Real Salt Lake, the coach, John Ellinger, was the coach of the U17 national team of the US for that World Cup cycle that was in New Zealand. And so over the 2 years before that tournament, we'd played them a couple times. He was familiar with me. He knew of me, and then knew me in college. He knew my college coach well. And so I was lucky that I got that opportunity. I think that's probably the only team, looking back with 2020 vision, and you go into it thinking every team should pick you. I look back and I think that's probably the only team that I ever had a chance with. And so I was one of the last picks in the last round of the supplemental draft. But it gave me an opportunity. It gave me a foot in the door. I think my first contract was $11,000 a year. Could have been 11 million. Didn't matter to me. It was like it was the opportunity to be in a professional environment. And then my biggest thing was just to try and work as hard as I could every day. And it didn't go as well as I thought. And I think that experience too really helped me now as a coach, because, I played 4 first team games in my first year. I played none in my second year. I was often, in the squad, not on the field, or just in the stands. And so when I then became a reserve team coach in an MLS system, where those are the athletes that I'm largely dealing with, is the ones that are just on the outside but close, I was able to really be authentic in the way that I approach that. But that time for me too, it really highlighted another thing, that opportunity. You don't play your way into a team. you train every day so that when an opportunity comes, you're ready for it. You don't have a good week of training, 2 good weeks of training, a month of good training and say, well, why am I not playing? You have to be on it all the time, because when I got told that I was starting, my first game was against LA Galaxy, someone got injured, and the last thing that they did a fitness test on a guy at the last moment of training the day before the game. I didn't think I was anywhere near the team. And all of a sudden they say, right, you're starting tomorrow. And I was like, whoa, like I never saw that coming. But at the same time, then it was good because I didn't have really time to think about it. I shot up the next day, I played the game and had a couple games after that. But it's really that point that you train every day, not to play your way into the team, but just to be ready, because often it's suspension, often it's injury, it's some sort of change in the circumstances around you that present an opportunity for you where you have to be ready.
And that's really good advice, right? That's you now. I can hear it. That's you as the coach talking to your younger self. And that's as much about building resilience and being patient and all these other qualities that doesn't matter if you're a footballer or a golfer or, a lawyer learning to become, a high court judge. These are qualities that high performing people have, right? Resilience, patience, long-term thinking. But it takes sometimes the guidance and support of a coach or a parent or a assistant coach or a senior player, it doesn't matter who you are, who's gone through this journey, to wrap an arm around a player and give them the assurance from time to time. As much as the push, it's also the pull. Anything else, just thinking now as a coach, that you're saying to the athletes in your space in this sort of stage that you can help share?
Yeah, I mean, the best thing I can do is just give them examples of how different everyone's pathway is. The player that we've released that goes on to captain the national team, the player that doesn't make your team but goes on to, play 200 MLS games. Like I think there's a fine balance between realizing that not every environment is right for you at that right time. And sort of then on the other end of the spectrum, sort of being delusional about where you should be and, oh, well, it's just the next environment will be better for me. I think there really is something to there being a fit and timing, opportunity, the right environment at the right time. And even I think my success that followed was because of what was in front of it. Like I don't know if I've spent 2 years playing 4 games, I don't know if all of a sudden I go to the next team, if that had been different, it gave me a real appreciation for being a regular contributor for a team and the responsibility that carried, and how much I enjoyed that.
Yeah, the words you use there, fit, time, and environment are critical, right? So your next move is a space, an environment that is perfect for you at that time, right? You've been allowed to thrive. So you move down a division to the USL, to the Portland Timbers, who are now a fantastic MLS club themselves. But at that time, they were kind of in the second division, right? The second tier. And you go there and you submit yourself as a regular. You're playing your competition games. You're finding a home in the Pacific Northwest, which is an amazing place. And then you get nominated for USL Defender of the Year. You have a fantastic 4 years there, and then you move on to another another USL club in the Montreal Impact. So just talk about that stage of your pathway, sort of moving down a level. Did you see it as down a level? Was it an opportunity just to play games? How and why did that seem like the right fit for you at that time?
Well, I mean, for me, it was like logical, right? I wasn't playing in MLS. Why would I try and go to another MLS team? And people were like, "Oh, you should try and go to preseason with a team." And for me, the only logical choice, and maybe part of it was being an international. I needed to stay in the country. I needed a contract if I wanted to stay in the country, so I could get my visa and all that sort of stuff. But so subconsciously, maybe that was a motivating factor. But when I looked at it, the only sensible decision was, well, if I can't play at this level, I should go to the next level below and try and play, and so I didn't look at any other MLS teams. If one of them had come calling, maybe it would have been different. But I started reaching out to USL teams, and that was me, asking, hey, do you know someone here? Do you know someone here? Can you put me in contact with so-and-so? And there was, oddly enough, an offer that came in from Minnesota United, who at the time were called the Minnesota Thunder. And I decided not to go there. And then there was an offer from Portland, and I ended up going to Portland. And I knew that they were one of the better teams in USL. They were certainly one of the better supported teams in USL. I had no idea about the city and whatnot. And man, what a place to land. We were, as a USL team, averaging around 8 or 9 thousand people. We'd sell out our stadium a couple times a year at 16,500 people. And the city itself in the Pacific Northwest is just spectacular. So it was a great place to land. And then, I found myself playing. And then you find your groove a little bit as a player, as a leader on a team, and we were successful. We had a really good year that first year, 2007. We had a good group of guys.
I think it'd be fair to sort of wrap up your playing career as somebody that's fought really hard, grinded it out, sought out opportunities and connections and environments. But it hasn't been easy, right? It hasn't been straightforward. You didn't play a lot. You're a foreigner. All these other things, and then we add into that mix the injuries. So we're the same age, and when FIFA announced that the first ever under-17 Boys World Cup was coming to New Zealand in 1999. So it wasn't the first, but it was coming to New Zealand in '99. That was our cycle. And you were, one of the best players in our country at the time, and you were in the squad. You had played all the sort of preparation games, and then injury strikes right on the eve of the World Cup. And then similar sort of things happen through your USL career, right? Sort of 10 years now as a pro, and you've played, in the vicinity of 100 games or less, which for regular athletes, that's not enough. That's not much, I should say. How do you now look back and approach the injury scenarios? Is it just a way of life? Is it something that you just got unfortunate with? Is there elements that you think you could have done different, which might have prevented some of those things? And I guess the resilience piece is huge. So how has that made you a better athlete before we allow the transition to the coaching to take place?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny because you take away 2 broken legs, and I was relatively healthy. I never had a lot of injuries. That first year in USL in Portland, I played every minute of every game. I think in college, the only games I missed was suspension from yellow card accumulation. But two moments that come from 2 tackles, and so the one thing that I was actually good at in football was the one thing that cost me a couple times. But yeah, the U17 one was tough because I was in and around that squad, and then there was a coaching change. It went from, Winton Rufert to Kevin Fallon, and then I fell out of that squad. And then it wasn't until quite late on that I was then included back in the squad, and it looked like I was included in the team to go to the World Cup, and we're playing the last friendly heading into the tournament, and I cracked my fibula, and it was one of those things where I played on with it, knowing something wasn't quite right. I come out of the game at halftime, go and get an X-ray, and it's just, devastating. And so to not see the field, and even then it was touch and go. They thought like I might be right for, to play some role. It was only a small, but, never see the field. Wonder what's going to happen. Go to college, Salt Lake, Portland, and now here I am, and there was similar sort of potential moment in my career in Portland where the team's doing well. It's looking like the team's going to go to MLS. I'm in my 3rd season with the Portland Timbers with maybe, hey, that light at the end of the tunnel. Listen, maybe I'll go up with the team. Maybe as they go into MLS, I'll be one of those players included in that squad. And then, 50-50 tackle late in the game, snap my leg in half, do it really bad this time. Ended up having 8 surgeries over the course of a little over a year, trying to come back, another year of like training and rehab to try and come back. And I spent almost 2 full years out of the game before Montreal gave me an opportunity. And I played 8 games with Montreal to finish the season and get myself back in it. But it's like, that was probably, oddly enough, the best thing that ever happened to me, because at 29 years old, that got me coaching. At 29 years old, the following year, I became an assistant coach for Portland Timbers in MLS. And that's not, I would have kept playing until the wheels fell off. I was fortunate that they fell off because I wasn't that good of a player. I wasn't playing at a great level. And after the injury, I wasn't the player that I was. It was still going to take me time to come back. I was still having issues. I couldn't do the same things that I'd done before. And so that really accelerated and kickstarted my coaching career. And again, you talk about timing and opportunity. I was in the stadium, and I'd trained with the Timbers in their first year of MLS. as part of my rehab. The club was unbelievable to me. They let me come back. They let me train to try and get myself fit, to try and get an opportunity somewhere else. And so I knew the coach and I knew a lot of people around the building still. And so I went in just to say, hey, listen, I'm going to be done playing. Let me know if you hear of any opportunities. And I met with the GM. I was about to leave the stadium. The head coach walks in and he says, listen, what are you doing here? And I said, well, this is what's happened. He goes, right, wait here a second. Goes into the GM's office, comes back out. They bring me into the office and they say, listen, whoever was supposed to take the job as the assistant coach, they're no longer coming. Preseason starts on Monday. Can you give us a hand on the field? We'll see how it goes for a couple of weeks. We need someone on the field and we need it to happen. Go away and think about it. There's nothing to think about, like what an unbelievable opportunity. And so that's how it went, and a week turns into two's into a month is a full-time job. And then, all of a sudden, then I look back, it wasn't like my first opportunity coaching. And I, go back to talking about playing, why you've got to be ready when an opportunity comes. You train every day, not to play your way into the team, but to be ready for when an opportunity comes. I had gone through and I'd started my coaching license. I'd been coaching kids in New Zealand when I was in high school with Billy Harris, and we'd do all these camps. I coached my high school team once I left it. And when I went to college, I was coaching summer camps. When I was in Salt Lake, I was coaching. When I was in Portland, I was coaching with a youth club. And so that was always a part of my journey with a view to, hopefully that's an opportunity that I can get down the road. Now, I never dreamed of the opportunity that I got given. But I believe those experiences, helped me be ready for it. And obviously, you're still thrown in the deep end.
It's a couple of threads I'm going to pull here. So you were take that coaching whilst you were still playing piece. Maybe you were thinking about a career after the first career, being the athlete, but thinking about athletes now immersing themselves in their own sport with, say, juniors or kids, or going on formalized coaching courses like the mini roos or a C license, not thinking high performance coaching, but basic fundamental coaching within your chosen sport. Do you think that's a smart play for younger youth athletes or emerging athletes to help with their own development as a athlete, from whether it's learning the tactics better, whether it's learning how to communicate better with children or people or players, that kind of coaching piece in order to make yourself a better athlete? Because my reflections are, when I started my coaching journey, I was still playing, and I felt I was a better player at the back end of my career because of the 4, 5, 6 years of coaching investment that I'd put in. I thought there was some real transferability. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think it just shows you a different side of the game. It teaches you a lot of social skills as well. You have to stand in front of a group of players. I mean, forget if they're only 10 years old or 12 years old or 8 years old. You've still got to organize them. You've got to speak in front of them. You've got to speak with parents. You've got to report to a director of coaching. You've got to oftentimes follow a curriculum, and you've got to understand it. And when you go and start on doing coaching licensing, you've got to start articulating your thoughts about the game, and you've got to start asking yourself the question of what do you believe in and what do you think is important. And so I think it's really beneficial, as long as it's not consuming and taking away from you being an athlete, as long as it's additive, because, no one gets to be an athlete forever. There has to be some time, and very few will get the opportunity to, have the career that lets them do whatever they want once they finish playing and whatever their chosen code is. So I think it's good to have a tool set, and equally to say, this isn't for me. Like, I got to figure something else out. So when I'm done playing, I'm not being a coach, and I think I've spoken to players in the past that have had that experience where they've gone and they've, gone through and taken a C license and a B license and got to an A license and coached, a team, and thought, what, I've had a look at it and that's not for me. I'm going to go a different pathway. And I think that's beneficial too.
Yeah, for sure. The second thread is linked. So it's come back to your injury, your time out of the game. Now, yes, you're going to be rehabbing physically and all that sort of stuff, but did it allow you the chance to look at other aspects of, in our case, football, So I'm thinking about athletes who might have an injury, an ACL, or a smaller injury, like you might be out for 6 weeks. They're not thinking about coaching, or they're not thinking about the next career. They're thinking about getting themselves back on the pitch. But how valuable is that time spent on in and around the environment, but looking at it from a different angle? So again, maybe becoming a support coach or a second assistant coach for a period of time, or going and take. We've spoken about the coaching piece, going and taking a junior team if you're going to be out for a year. But sitting with the analyst and understanding what they're looking at from a dissecting the game perspective, or rocking up to with the physio and spending time in the physio room, because you might learn more around recovery or rehab or muscle strengthening or massage or whatever. Insert whatever external stimulus you want here. But I guess the question being, that time out of the game, should it be just focused on getting yourself right, or should you be maximizing every minute or every hour available to become a better athlete through a different lens?
Yeah, I mean, I 100%, utilize the time to see things from a different perspective, to gain a different skill set. Like I was really fortunate. I had an opportunity I'd done the most of my rehab. I was at the real pointy end where I couldn't get over the hump. I couldn't train consistently. I couldn't run without something flaring up. And so my wife was working with Adidas at the time. Adidas had a connection with a place is now called Exos. At the time it was called Athletes Performance in Arizona, and they trained some of the best athletes in the world. And so they were able to open that door for me, and I was fortunate that my insurance at the time was able to cover a lot of that cost after that initial experience there. But I got to see the best athletes in the world in one of the best environments in the world. You talk about, American football and the football combine. I was there when those players were training for the combine. And that was the first time I've been in an environment that was really detailed about, my rehab, my strength and conditioning, my aerobic system development, my technical development. All that training was housed in one place. My nutrition, and to see all of that put together at such a level of detail, you've got this level of detail that houses everything in one place. And you've got this whole system working together where 4 or 5 different people that are responsible for your development and recovery as an athlete are all on the same page. It was my first understanding of sports science. It was my first understanding of, really periodization and you're an athlete. I want to do more. I want to do more. And they're like, no, rest. Today's rest. And learning about the intention behind rest and recovery. When you're in a gym and they're moving you by inches, to just say, no, not quite there. Your foot should be in this angle. And then you feel an instant difference. And you think, you start to thinking about the detail around coaching and development and things like that. And it was just a fascinating place to be. And I ended up spending 10 weeks there as part of my rehab. And when I came back, I was so fortunate then that I got the opportunity to coach, because I was able to start sharing that. Just, hey, man, like, I didn't even know a place like that existed. I was never going to be able to afford to go there as an athlete. And again, being injured was one of the greatest things that happened to me, because my rehab, I got to do my rehab there in one of the best places in the country after 18 months of, really suffering my way through it. So it was really, really transformative to see that. And I would encourage, to go back to your point, if you are in that situation, develop a skill set, see what's around you, don't be too narrow-minded on just what the rehab is, but experience, ask questions, figure out why it's all being put together the way it is, because you just never know how that's going to help you down the road.
Yeah, you've got a choice, right? You've got a opportunity to be a victim and, why me, or why me again, or feel sorry for yourself. And I think give yourself, 24 hours to feel sorry for yourself is perfectly fine. But then your choice is, how am I going to maximize this time? Yes, get myself back to the best physical position I can be in, but there's so much other opportunities if you go and seek them out to become a better athlete and ultimately develop other skill sets as well. I just want to spend kind of the last part of this looking around your coaching journey now that we've sort of brought it to life. So you spent 9 great years at the Timbers. You're assistant coach when you won the MLS Cup in 2015, and then you moved into the Portland Timbers 2 side as a head coach. just think about or share your thoughts around that transition from being assistant to a head coach. Equally so, first team to a reserve team. Like it's a dynamic in itself. Was that something that you were pushing for, the opportunity to lead a program? Was working with the youth group more your speed that you feel you could connect with? I don't know why or how that move came about, but yeah, just speak about that transition point, I guess, between assistant to head and then first team to youth team.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't something that I was pushing for, and it was one of those things that just catches you by surprise, and you look back and you think, man, what an incredible pivotal moment in my development as a coach, because Caleb Porter was the head coach. He parted ways with the Portland Timbers. That brought in a new first team staff, and the organization kept all of us that were involved, and just albeit in different roles. So myself and the goalkeeper coach, we went to the second team. One of the assistants stayed with the first team. Someone from the second team came up to be an analyst with the first team, and so there was just a big sort of reshuffle. And it was fantastic for me, an incredible experience, because you sit there as an assistant coach, and often you find yourself thinking, man, why aren't we doing this, or what about this, or what, well, now you get to try it, and now you get to understand. And even at that level, and the team was then playing in the USL Championship, so we were playing against independent USL teams as well. So it's different to what the reserve environment is now, but you having to put a plan together to win games. The team had come off a season where they only had 15 points, they only had 3 wins, and there was a real push from the ownership and from the organization to make the team better and more successful on the field, while still having that idea of developing players. And so not only did I have that challenge as a coach, but one of my former teammates with the Timbers in USL had just gone from being the head coach of that team to now my assistant. So even though we're good friends, there's an interesting dynamic there that we had to navigate as well. And so, the things that you learn instantly about managing a staff, managing a schedule, managing travel, meals, all of that sort of stuff was invaluable in my development as a coach, and gave me a tremendous appreciation too when I got to come back and then be an assistant coach, of understanding just, the level of energy that's getting pulled from a head coach at an MLS level. Even though I was experiencing only a fraction of it as a USL coach.
So you think about that second team, or if a lot of people, it could be the youth team. What is your focus on? You spoke there about the director from the club that we want to get more points. So therefore there's a huge results focus. Is it normally about that? Is it a blend between getting the results? We all want to win. We're not going to go out there and be happy about losing, but how much is it around the development of individuals to try and get them up to the first team level? What was it like now in your, in the different club? Was it the same? I guess what I'm trying to ask and try and tease from you is, how much of that is directed from above versus how much do you believe it's around the development of the individual as opposed to the development and performance of the team?
Yeah, I think each environment is different, and some may, have a strict directive of what they want and what they want a team to look like and what they want the age range of the players to be. Some might give the coach more leeway with that. We had at that time sort of overcorrected one way where the team was very, very young but couldn't compete. And the reserve league now in Major League Soccer they're all MLS second teams. What you had then was probably a third of the teams were playing in either the USL Championship or USL League One. And so you're playing against independent teams. So you take a 18-year-old or 16-year-old out of your academy, and he goes and plays against a 29-year-old that's got, a wife and 2 kids at home and is playing for Phoenix Rising. I mean, it played against Drogba, at that time with Phoenix Rising. So it was a difficult environment in that sense. And so I think I don't think that things are mutually exclusive. I think development and winning sort of go together, in the sense that part of development is knowing how to win a game. It's knowing what the last 2 minutes look like. It's knowing what that box defending moment is, or where that clearance goes in the last second. I think those are really important moments. And I don't think once you get to that level where the next team is the first team, I don't think you can deliver a player to the first team without them knowing the importance or the significance of moments in a game that lead to, winning and losing. And so you can certainly separate elements of it and create different wins within the game as part of like individual development, and the team development as well. But I do think there is something to be said for the result at the end of it as well.
I think, yeah, where I just resonated there is knowing what the group or team at the next level needs in order for them to be successful. So the next level for you at that stage is the top team. It's about, in the day, it's about winning, right? It's about points, it's about brand, it's about getting fans through the gate. So if you talk about the level behind the second team, it's, the third team or the, U17s. What does the youth team player need at that point? So I think understanding what that looks like, feels like, where does development and winning, where's that continuum, where's it shift? But I think where I've been guilty in the past is thinking, oh no, only the first team needs to think about results, so therefore it's only about development. But your point there is to deliver a player to the next level, winning is important. So therefore it's got to come in the conversation and the learning and the moment, right? That putting your body on the line to defend the 6-yard box, that's a moment that's expected at first team level. So it should be encouraged, taught, whatever, at the levels below. Really interesting point. You're now at Minnesota United. All right, you spent a couple of years there as the Minnesota 2 head coach. You're now back in the first team. I just want to understand a little bit about the dynamic you might have now with the current head coach, Eric Ramsey, who's 32, young guy, up and comer. Spent some. He's from the UK or maybe from Wales. Spent some time in Man United's system. But you now, as a 42-year-old, and your head coach is 32, equally so. Your captain is older than him, right? So just want to understand a little bit about that dynamic. Is it a thing? Is it completely blown out of the water? How is that dynamic now with a young head coach who is still to prove himself, really? How is that sort of working out for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think it's a thing at all. It was after his announcement, there was certainly a lot of questions around it from our local media. There was certain, people that were wanting to talk about it and make it a narrative. But ultimately, job as a coach is to, help the players succeed. And from day one, that's been the case, And so a very good year last year and tremendous season so far this year. But he's not just a good coach. He's very open, very inquisitive, very trusting, and a tremendous person to be able to work with, And so there was, an odd situation where he'd been announced as the coach coming in, and I was still taking the team. He was waiting for his visa, and so we're talking about things, and I'm trying to get him, up to speed on some things. But there's certain bits about that the US is its own beast, and the league is so different. And so I think that's where I've been able to help too. Is just sort of, hey, these are sort of things that we have to do, or it's a little bit different here because of that, and just helping speed up the cultural transition into MLS, because the methods of player acquisition and squad building are completely different from a lot of other leagues in the world. The college system, the academy system, how it all knits together, even the different tiers of professional soccer in the US, and sort of how close or far apart they are to each other is different. And so he's just been really open to ideas. That Dennis Lawrence, the assistant he brought with him too, has been fantastic. And so they've just shown a lot of trust, and I think that resonates with the players. It resonates with everyone else in the building, and gets everyone on the same page quickly, working towards winning a trophy.
Yeah, that rapport building is critical, right, for everybody. But your captain is a fellow Kiwi, Michael Boxall. How is he managed his playing group, or his peers, with this new head coach coming in? Like, have you noticed, Boxy as a leader is, kind of showing the way for the younger guys? Has there been any sort of tension in there, or like especially when he first came in, or due to the, I guess, values and skill sets of the head coach, has just sort of mitigated that right from the start? Where I'm trying to get to is, we might have aspiring coaches listening in who are young themselves, going into senior environments where this dynamic might sort of present itself. So, other than what you've already mentioned, is there other ways that we can potentially develop or understand effective coaching qualities to go into to manage a group of older people?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of it just comes from effective communication. Even the situation I was in, I got told I was taking the team 10 days before the first day of preseason. And the first thing you have to do is communicate with the players, because trying to get them on board and understanding and just showing a little bit of transparency, I think goes a long way. And I think Eric coming in has been really open with the players, had a lot of conversations. He's not the kind that's just going to hang someone out to dry. It's, getting a real feel for who needs a private conversation, who needs a conversation in a small group, who can be, you can speak about or speak with in front of the team. And, we part of the strength of what we've got here is we had some older players, we have some experienced players that are, top professionals. And I think Michael Boxall is one of them. And that's why he continues to have the success he does at this point in his career, MLS All-Star this year and having a fantastic season, doing all the little things right, taking care of nutrition, taking care of the work in the gym, taking care of sleep and training and all of that stuff, on top of trying to be a husband and a father, and so we have a number of those guys in our group that show that leadership, that show that collective buy-in, and know that the window of opportunity to win something in professional sport is often a short one. And once you have that and you have a chance to compete for a trophy, you really need to go all in on it.
Mm. Just to wrap us up, mate. So we spoke about coaching on the side or away from the game. You've also done ongoing education. All right. So you've completed your master's degree in psychology. You've also done your American pro license. Of those two things, the psychology piece maybe first, and then what have you learned or taken away from the US pro license that you're applying? Where does the psychology piece fit into your day-to-day life? Is it just something that you, as a assistant coach, have a specific role with? Is there a sports psychologist in the club? Are you trying to use your degree and learning through there to move the group forward? Where's that sports psych piece fit in your opinion? And then let's just talk about the pro license after that.
Yeah, so the psychology thing came about because I couldn't get on the pro license, so they just started here in the US, and they didn't want to take two candidates from one club at the time. And so our head coach was on it, and then the next cycle, the first assistant was on it. And so I was really, I valued what I'd done with the A license and the B license. And I was like, well, I need to do something. And Major League Soccer at the time had a partnership with Southern New Hampshire University to do online degrees. And I was like, well, psychology has always interested me. I'm going to do a master's degree in psychology, and it wasn't completely focused on sports psychology either. At the same time, I've just become a father. I've now got a young family. I'm looking at early childhood development stuff as well, and just a really interesting time in my life where I'm just trying to think about things a little bit more. And I think the large part of that is really opening your eyes to just simple things, simple things about how language can shape an environment. What are the words you're choosing to use? Are they positive? Are they negative? Are they passive, or is there action behind them? Is there, just awareness of bias that exists? Every coach is sat on there and they're thinking about pulling someone out of the game. The second they do one more wrong thing, because you're looking for that one more wrong thing, then you drag them off the field, and thinking about that stuff, and thinking about then getting an insight into teaching and how people learn, and cognitive fatigue, and like you can't overload people with all these ideas, they're not going to retain anything. And so it started to give me a really good idea, or start me thinking about, what does that look like in coaching? What does that look like in performance, and how much is enough, and how much, when we're giving to the players, are we doing just for us to say that we've done our job, we've ticked that box, I did that, and how much is truly for them, and how much are they getting, how much are they taking out of that. And so that was really good for me, because then that led directly into, going on the pro license, where now it becomes focused on the sport, it comes focused on the coaching journey, but I had that background of, a lot of the cognitive processes that go on with just people.
If I was to sort of ask, is there any tangible resources that you can point us towards from a sports psych piece, be it football specific or external? Could be a book, could be a podcast, could be a person to go and listen to. Is anybody that comes to mind?
And it's not sports psychology, but one of the best people that we had on with us, and you talk about people that are in youth development and stuff. Doug Lemoff, who's a teacher and teaches teachers and teachers that are in difficult environments, and he was really, really interesting in some of the stuff, just talking about the way people learn and the way that you can create a good learning environment.
Yeah, he's fantastic. For those listening that want to maybe dig a little bit deeper into the sports psych piece, previous guest Don Batiste, High Performance Sport New Zealand sports psychologist, and one of the guys that I've come across, Dan Abrams, both really, really interesting people to listen to. So go and explore that. From the pro license piece, we've had past guest Ollie Harder, who's working professionally in Norway, and recently Didier Chamberon. Have you come across Didier in your time in the US, mate? The head of US coach?
No, I haven't.
Good guy. Spent some time in Oceania as well. So nice stuff, mate. Hey, appreciate your time. There's been a lot of wisdom gleaned from this, especially around the athlete piece and the coach piece. So just before we move into rapid fire questions, is there any messaging that you would like to provide for parents who might be listening, who either has a young athlete on this journey, or maybe their son or daughter is thinking about the coaching path?
Yeah, I think for a parent, it's support the journey, don't lead it. I think we often come across a lot of athletes where you get the sense that the parent wants it more for the kid than the kid wants it for themselves. And I think you need to have an athlete take responsibility for their pathway at a certain point. I think you can expose them to things, you can give them access to resources and opportunities, but ultimately they're the ones that have to take that big leap, and they have to want to take that leap. And so I think for parents, being able to be supportive, to be inquisitive, and ask questions about the environment that they might be going into, the environment they're in, start to help lead that thinking for them, is really important too.
Yeah, great advice. Thanks, mate. Let's wrap us up with rapid fire questions if you're ready.
Yeah, ready, mate.
Cool. You ask me a question that you want to know, and maybe the audience would like to know as well.
So my question is this, because I've seen you've spoken to a lot of fascinating people from fascinating backgrounds, and I'm sure within that there's a lot of common themes or ideas that come from it. But if there was one thing that an athlete, pre-performance athlete, should start doing right now if they're not already doing it, what would you say it is?
Well, there's a lot, but I always go with where my brain goes first. And I don't think it's one specific piece of advice from one of our guests, but it's my advice to young athletes that I work with on a daily basis, is zoom out a little bit, have a look at the full calendar, be it a year, be it a season, be it a week, and start to narrow it down to the day, and then go and have a conversation with somebody that you think might be in the know. It could be your head coach, it could be you might have a relationship with the technical director, maybe you're more rapport with the assistant coach, who can then also feed up if they need to go and get more understanding. But go and take ownership, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Think about your whole plan. Have the conversation with somebody that's probably in the know to gain advice or feedback around, what do you think I could be doing more of? Or sometimes what I see a lot of is actually you should be doing less. You should be deleting some stuff off your plate to really focus on A and B or C. So taking ownership, but then seeking out experts' support to try to maximize the time in the day. Now, some of that time needs to be, I need to rest, or I need to go and not do my sport and be a teenage kid. But some of it is you can go and, listen to a podcast, you can watch a webinar, you can get yourself on a coaching course, you can go and watch a different code if you're a young coach. There's so many things that we can do, but sometimes we need the support or stimulus from an outsider to go, here's what we think you can do more of. So yeah, that's kind of where my brain kind of went.
All right.
Can you give us a concept or idea from the US or from Minnesota that we can trial in our environments?
I mean, the one thing that stuck with me in terms of like a concept idea when I was on the pro license was the Japanese philosophy of Kaizen, like small, incremental, continuous improvement. And the way that we used to boil that down with our development groups was, instead of taking these big, lofty goals, just make something laughably achievable. If you want to start doing it, make it laughably achievable. So small. And then you look at that within, your daily life, and you can do those things. You want to quit something, you want to start something. And we also used to look at it, in terms of the game, when you're looking at like a defender getting pressure 1v1, could you get a yard closer? Could you run a second faster? Probably, and you get to these points where you're asking a question that it's almost impossible to say no to, that then if you start stacking up those small wins, by the time you look back, the development that you've had over a period of time is pretty significant and more sustainable than if you just gone and tried to attack something giant, failed, and fallen off the cliff.
Laughably achievable. I like that. Can we just pause on this a little bit longer? Where did laughably achievable come from? Is there a certain meaning behind that?
No, I mean, it's just almost one of those things that is just as it sounds, like it's a goal that it seems so ridiculous that you can't really say no to it. You want to stop drinking coffee. All right. So take one less sip today. You want to start running. Well, run for 10 seconds today. And you can do that. And then tomorrow it's 20 seconds, and then maybe it's a bit more. I mean, and for me, like I was struggling because even with working out, like I'm not going for a run unless I'm doing this much time or I'm going for this distance. And what I found was it was really easy for me to say, I don't have time today. I'm not getting around to it. And so I'd set my goal of how many miles I was going to run a month and how many I was going to run a year. And I started missing this. And it's almost like once you've missed it once, you give yourself permission to miss it again. And then the next year I was like, I need to do something different. And so I just went with, you know what, if I start to feel like I should go for a run or something, well, run for 2 minutes. It's better than none. Run for 5, it's better than none. 10's better than, 5, 20 if you can do it. And you find that once you start, you keep going a little bit more, you keep going a little bit more. And even this year, I was laughing to my wife because the goal that I set out for this year, here we are, September 3rd, and I've knocked it off because it gives you more incentive to just act and to do something, and to start moving. Because oftentimes the hardest thing with anything is just to start.
I appreciate you going into detail there. That's awesome. Can you give us a recommendation of a book, movie, TV series, or podcast that we can go and find?
Yeah, I mean, the book I just finished reading, It Takes What It Takes, and it's Russell Wilson, the quarterback, Seattle Seahawks, and I just think the title, really sums it up because it goes into detail that journey as an athlete, but it takes what it takes. Like it's not easy. It's hard. It's uncomfortable. It talks about the illusion of choice, and you think you have these choices, but you really don't. If you want to get to a certain level, you have to do certain things, and you have to hold yourself to a certain standard, or it'll just fall by the wayside. And I just thought it was a really fascinating. There's just so many parts of it that really resonated, with me.
Yeah, incredible book. I read it last year. I got it given to me as a gift for my 40th birthday, which was awesome. But choice is an illusion is a great little concept to think about. I'll put a link to the book in the show notes because I encourage people to go and check that one out. Great shout, by the way. What's if I give you a give you a magic wand and you can change one thing, I'll let you determine what that thing is. What would you change?
Um, I mean, I think, just access to opportunity in sport, equity in that. I think, you see now, especially with pay to play models, early specialization, individual training, so many of these things are like financially determinant. And especially here in the US, there's a country that is so vast. There's so many athletes. There's so many kids that might not have an opportunity just, because of circumstances beyond their control. And I think if you could change one thing, and you could, you put that to education and a lot of other things, but sport, as well, and in terms of just access.
If I asked you for one piece of advice that you were given that you can share with us, what would you say?
Um, I had a teacher in school who used to say this, and then so I used to think it was really good from him until I read the book that it came from, and I realized it wasn't his. But the main thing is to keep the main thing.
Yep.
And Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. I came later to learn that was one of the tenets of that book. But I think it's really important. It's really important. You're designing a training session. What's the main thing? What's the main idea? Does it show up in your training session? What's the main thing for the game this weekend? And you can often get lost in overanalyzing and over reflecting, any situation, that sometimes it's really good to just, and to your point of zooming out a little bit, just pause and just say, hey, listen, what's the main thing here? And reminding yourself to always keep that at the forefront.
Yeah, brilliant. It's the banner, I think, on the Strive 365 Facebook page.
There you go.
There you go. I resonate well with that one. Brings us to, what are you striving for at the moment?
I mean, at the moment, it's trying to be really intentional and a good example for my kids. Like, it's interesting going through their journey, and having an 11-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, 3 daughters, and trying to think about what's coming ahead for them, and trying to learn from them, and the tremendous perspective that gives you too. I mean, it's so. I think striving to show them that chasing dreams is really important, and trying to do things that may be uncommon is really important too, and trying to sort of navigate your way, and trying to be supportive of them on their journeys.
Amazing. And finish us off with a quote for the week.
So this one's stolen from my wife. So the beauty of COVID is we'd be sitting in the same room, and we would be doing our Zoom calls. And I heard her, 3 or 4 times. She mentioned this quote when she was on a call with the groups that she was leading, and I thought it resonates so well in life, in sport, in anything. And it's Maya Angelou, the civil rights activist and writer. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. And so that growth mindset, accountability around doing better once you know better, and also you don't know what you don't know. And I think we've got to give people the benefit of the doubt with that too, is help people with what they don't know, and then once they know, hopefully they can continue on the path.
Cameron Knowles, this has been a great chat. Appreciate everything you've shared with us. I've taken a fair bit of notes myself, which is always a good sign of a good ep. But I really love your messaging around, your journey hasn't been straightforward, but you've made it work. You've grind things out. You've given yourself to your profession, and been prepared to go and find kind of the next opportunity, and worked hard at trying to move that forward. So we spoke a lot around timing and opportunities. They don't just happen to the lucky people, right? You almost got to go and put yourself in a situation where, when that presents itself, you're prepared to take that leap as well. So you've done that both as an athlete, and you're doing it as a coach, and no doubt you're doing it as a father as well. So really appreciate your opportunities to share the wisdom with us, especially around that coaching piece and the athlete piece. So appreciate your time.
No worries, mate. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for sticking through to the end of this episode. It would mean the world to us if you could hit the like or share button, so we can get these amazing insights out to other like-minded coaches, athletes, and parents. Cheers.